Okay, now, last but not least, let's head back into our front end and let's implement this password reset component. So to do that, we're going to need a few things. It's going to be almost identical to this recover component here, except it's going to be a little more involved. So we're actually going to extract this logic into a custom hook. And the reason we didn't do that here is because this logic is pretty simple. We could put this in a custom hook. It'd be totally fine, but no need to, really. So let's go into the hooks and create one called use password reset form.js. And in this case, we have this use authentication form here, which would probably be really useful actually in this situation, to take this use authentication form, and we're also using it for this use authentication form. We're using it for the use login form, and we're using it for the use registration form. So why don't we just use it for the use password reset form as well? So let's go ahead and import use state here from React, and let's import use authentication form from hooks use authentication form. Then we'll import API client from services API client, and we'll export a const use password reset form. Now this password reset form will expect a token, this hook, and then it will take that token and it'll do some magic with it, but it'll leave it for now. And then it'll extract the same thing we do in this registration form. We'll get pretty much the exact same thing here, except we don't need the user. Let's just grab this part right here. And let's also store, yeah, we don't need that user. We're good there. We'll just say user is an empty object because we don't care. And then we'll say the message and set message should be equal to use state null, in the same way we did for our recover component. Then we can handle submit, say const handle on submit equals async. Oops, there we go. And we'll do the same thing we did in our, you know what, let's actually go to the use registration form. Let's just grab all of this right here, and let's delete what we don't need. Ta-da! So we don't need to set the user. We don't need to set the token. We can get rid of all of this here. We don't need to sign up the user. We do want to set is processing to false. We do want to make sure that the form.passwordConfirm does not equal to form.password, but instead of, actually, that's totally fine. We can just do it like this. And then down here, we'll say const data error is equal to API client dot reset password. Now, remember that we want to send two things to the back end. We want to send the new password, and we want to make sure that we use that token to hit the endpoint. So we'll say token and new password is equal to form.password. Then we'll say if error, set errors. Let's just do the same thing here. Or right there actually is probably a better one. Set errors, form, error, and if data dot message, set message, data dot message. And then we'll set is processing to false. So now all it's left is to return or expose anything from this hook that we'll need. The form, the errors, the message, is processing, handle on submit, and handle on input change. There we go. So now our use password reset form is ready to go. And so in the password reset component, let's just go ahead and, well, we could probably just copy, maybe we'll type out parts of it, just so we know what's going on here. So we'll say import, and we're gonna do some interesting imports here. But first we're just gonna import use password reset form from hooks use password reset form. Then we're gonna import password reset.css and export default function password reset. And return the same thing here. We'll return almost an identical component, but instead of saying recover, we'll say password reset here. And then we'll say const form errors message is processing. Oops. Handle on submit, handle on input change is equal to use password reset form. And we're going to need a token somehow. So that's the next question, is like, how are we going to get this token? And that's actually kind of interesting, but we'll get to that in a second. And so in this case, we no longer have error. We'll just say errors.form and errors.form. And then here, we'll keep the same thing with message. But the interesting part about this is we actually don't need email. We need the two parts of register, which would be the password and password confirm. So let's copy those instead, because we actually don't care about the email, right? We instead want to have both the password and password confirm sections. And so that should get us almost set up. We should also probably include, actually, you know what? Let's get rid of this whole link section here. We don't need that. There we go. Okay, that seems right, except let's not call this recover account. Let's call this save password. And the problem is, the next thing we're going to do is just make sure we can get that token. But before we do that, let's just make sure this renders nicely. We should also call this reset password. And we should also change this to say, actually, let's just get rid of this. We don't need it. We'll just leave all of this as it is, because the user knows what they're doing. Reset password. And let's export this the same way we did with our recover component. So we'll say export default as password reset from password reset / password reset. And in our app component, we will import password reset here. I like to keep it alphabetical just for posterity. And then add it right here. And we'll say password reset. Great. Now, hopefully, if I didn't have any errors, maybe I do, maybe I don't, we'll come here and let's go to password reset. Okay, cool. Need to put the styles in there, but there we go. Let's copy everything from our recover.css, throw them into password reset, change the .recover to .password reset, change that up, save that, head over here. Beautiful. This is what we want. Now the question is, this URL is going to come in here like this. Token equals something magical, like that, right? Now our job is going to be to take this token and to somehow extract it from the URL and send it to the backend. To do that, we can leverage some cool things that are provided to us by React Router DOM. The first one is this use location hook from React Router DOM. And then I can come in here and say const location equals use location. So if I save this and it tells me, hey, location is assigned but never used, let's console.log it. So we can just use it and see what's up. So if I come back here and I check out the console, and it has this location object. Now, the location object is interesting. The location object contains a bunch of information about the URL currently, any information that exists on the URL, including the path name, which is password reset, and this thing called search, which contains question mark token equals, which is exactly what we're looking for. That's why they're also called URL search params at times. Now, there's other things in here that we could take advantage of, but they're less important for the moment. What we want to do is we want to extract this search, location.search from the location object and get that token, extract that token. Now, we could do that manually. We could go in there and parse that string and handle that manually, but there's actually a better way to do that. Let's say const search params is equal to new URL search params right here. And these come native with JavaScript, in modern JavaScript at least. So if we come in here, we can just pass in location.search, and it should location search params. Now, the interesting thing is this is going to be a URL search params object, and so if you actually console.log it, there will be nothing there. So instead I'm going to say search params .to string, so you can just see it stringified, see what we're working with here. And if we do this, we see that the search params are equal to token equals this value right there. Cool. Now, the URL search params object has a very easy way of accessing these values. Instead of just stringifying it and then having to do the same kind of parsing, we can say const token equals search params dot get token, just like that. And it returns the first value associated to the given search parameter. So we can come in here, let's const.log that too to make sure we have that token. And we do that again, and we see the token is available to us extracted directly from the URL. So this is just very useful. And by the way, if you were to replace this with absolutely nothing, just code here, everything would still work fine. That token would just be null. And this is the interesting thing about URL search parameters, is we can add things like token on there and it'll work fine. We can add additional search parameters like hey equals hi, hello equals there. And if you use that, you'll see that the URL search params now consists of a number of different things separated by that ampersand sign. But the one we want is just the token. And so it doesn't matter how many you add on here. The canonical URL is just password reset. It doesn't change the actual path name itself, whereas path parameters do. If you were to just put at the end of here something like this and to add that URL at the end, like that, that is a URL that it does not know. So actually adjusting the canonical URL itself will change the location itself. But if you were to add URL search params to a path, all that happens is that that canonical URL is the same, but those additional search params are concatenated on to the end of the canonical URL. And this is just like it's an extensive way, it's an extensive way to handle search parameters. It's often used for constructing parameters when you're doing a complex search, but which is why they're given the new URL search params name. But that's less important. Just understanding how they work, and that is another way to pass data through the URL, is an important part of understanding why we use them. So we can then take this token that we've extracted, and we can pass it right to the use password reset form. And then we should be able to send requests to the backend that contain the token from the URL, which is constructed by our backend. It should be sent in the email. The user will click the email and get redirected to the address we want them to. And then we can send it to the backend with their new password. But we also have to make sure in our API client that our API client is ready for the method that we're supposed to be calling, which is called reset password. So let's add one there too. We'll come in here, we'll say async reset password, and it should accept what? A object with a token and a new password property. Okay. So we'll say token new password, and then we will return await this.request, and the endpoint will be to auth password reset. The method will be post, and the data will be the new password. Except here, this will be question mark token equals, and we'll pass in that token, just like so. Now if we save this, cool, looks like nothing's broken yet, which makes me feel good. However, looking at this, I want to make sure, like, okay, this looks right. I don't feel like there's anything wrong here, but maybe it's wrong. And the main thing that's wrong is, like, we don't actually know what the URL would look like here. We can construct it manually, which is what we're going to do. We can say token equals and then pass in the token right there. And that token we can just get directly from our database. So if we were to use, let's try with the wrong token first. Let's just add some gibberish here and say new password is new password, and let's save it and see if it works. That token is either expired or invalid. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. Now if we pass the actual token itself in there, and we change this up, put it there. Okay, let's try this again with new password, and save it this time. Password successfully reset. Ooh, that's exciting. Now let's try it out. Going to login, and we'll say person at person.person, and their password should be new password. Magical, and it works. So we have now successfully implemented a password reset system into our application that works for the front end, on the front end, and on the back end, and allows users to reset their password and by the way, they should have received the confirmation email, but I'm guessing if we look here, yeah, we get the same thing. The from address does not match a verified sender identity. Oh, I guess that didn't happen here, huh? Interesting. Maybe we should check that out, why that didn't happen in the auth. Here, where is that route? It should happen right here, right? It should send a password reset confirmation email, but I don't think we got it there. So, oh well, we'll take a look at that in a second. But for the time being, we have everything set up and ready to go. So all that's left is for us to verify our sender identity and make sure that we can actually send emails, and we will have fully implemented and integrated an external service into our application.